Ambassador Seto is currently the Kiribati ambassador to the United Nations and the United States, and the ambassador designate to Canada and Mexico. In essence, all of North America. There aren't that many ambassadors who are all of North America. Prior to his appointment in the diplomatic service, Ambassador Seto had represented and served his communities, his people, his electorate for 30 years in government, from 1987 to 2017. During that time, he had many roles. He was president of the Republic from 1994 to 2003. He was also a member of Parliament, and he was a member of the opposition. During his tenure as president, he arranged for Kiribati's membership in the United Nations, and he attended the Millennium Summit of the year 2000. He was also deeply involved in promulgating the Millennium Development Goals. Now, I know, Mr. Ambassador, that you've told me many fascinating details about Kiribati, but today we have thousands of listeners online who are teachers, who are students, who are business people. And like me, none of them have been to Kiribati, or at least very, very, very few have. And a few of them probably have seen pictures of it, but I'm not sure that they know much about it. So I'd ask you to tell us more about Kiribati and about the policies that you implemented. Please, Mr. Ambassador.
Well, thank you, Adam, for the question as to where is Kiribati. How do you find Kiribati? Let me assure you that's not very difficult to find Kiribati, because once you are in Hawaii, Honolulu, you can catch a 2-hour flight to Christmas Island, which is very near to Honolulu. That's one of our most nearest islands to the state of Hawaii. And so, but the islands, of course, are made up, the nation is made up of 33 islands in the Central Pacific, with its western boundary, far away, about 4,000 miles away from Christmas to the west is Tarawa, and an ocean island even further west, near to Nauru. Nauru is another nation. So the nation is made up of 33 islands spread along the equator, east-west, and covering, of course, a huge ocean. But the land masses are quite small. If you add up all the 33 islands, they total up to 810 square kilometers. But they're really spread and scattered in 3 main groups. The western group is called the archipelago, shall we say. The western archipelago is made up of 16 islands, and that is called the Gilbert Islands archipelago, the Gilbert Islands group. And of course, it's named Gilbert because of the Captain Gilbert, who brought the first settlers to Australia in 1788, right? That's a long time back, of course, much after the US was settled. And so the Captain Gilberts and the Captain Marshalls were the captains who brought the first settlers in Australia. And on their way back, they have to sail with the wind and tack north. And eventually they sighted these islands across the horizon. The first lot of island was called Gilbert Islands. And the next lot further north is called the Marshall Islands, named after these 2 great captains. Gilbert Islands is interesting. We call it Kiribati, Gilbert. Kiribati is really, gives us the word Kiribati, they sound similar. But so there it is, that's the origin. We were there, but they found us. As they always say, found us and they put us on the map, thank God. We were on the map from that time. And so, but we have that archipelago in the west, which is called the Gilbert Archipelago. And then in the further east, in the center, is called the Phoenix Archipelago, Phoenix Islands. And there are 8 islands there. And then further east, nearer to Hawaii, is the Line Islands archipelago, again made up of 8 islands spread apart. Christmas Island is of course the sub-capital of the Line Islands group, and as I said, about 2 hours from Honolulu. And Christmas Island, interestingly, is the biggest coral atoll in the world. If you look for an atoll bigger than Christmas, you won't find it. It's not easy to build an atoll, they say, but the Christmas Island managed to go that big. And in fact, it takes up half of the area of Kiribati. It made up half of the area of the 810 square kilometer. More than half is in the Christmas Island. And so, of course, it's a great, a big country for a big island for us. And we might go there and hide if the climate change continues to threaten us. And we may have to raise the island, because the islands are really very low. They are atolls, coral atolls or islands, as they say. And the highest point would be about 2 meters. And to hide away from the climate change is not easy, because it's quite a challenge, because as you move back, you fall on the other side. It's the sea. You cannot retreat back to the hills. There are no hills. It's all flat, sandy, coconut trees, pandan, not much vegetation, because the coral sand does not support much vegetation. But of course, luckily, the vegetation we have is enough for survival. And we're able to get everything we need, anything, food-wise, medicine-wise, nutrition-wise, we get it all from there, but mostly from the sea, because we're made up of 99.98% ocean and 0.002 something land. But much of our needs come from the sea. I would say 90% of our survival needs, food-wise and everything. We call the sea our cupboard, our fridge. We simply go out and collect. It's all there. Children, women. You don't have to be a courageous guy to go out to the sea, because the sea flat is always there ready at low tide to walk, and you can collect whatever you want. Lobsters, crabs, you name them. Lobster, eels, octopus, you name anything in the sea, in the world, is all there. Anyway, the islands are made up, of course, of people. The people there, just, we may say, they're all of one race. We call them the Kiribati, Tungaru. The old name of Kiribati was Tungaru. But when Captain Gilbert came, we forgot about the word Tungaru. We're now using Kiribati, which comes from Gilbert. And so we are lucky. We are free from the racial divides and the ethnic divides. We are a homogeneous society. One language, one set of custom, one set of understanding. We don't have a language problem. We don't have misunderstanding. Of course, there are always what you call dialectal differences, but it doesn't affect us. And the people, of course, are mainly Christians. 90% of the population is Christian. The rest is not. And let me also say that we are generally peaceful people, peaceful in terms of, because we don't have much conflict. We don't have boundary conflict. We may have small ones. Landowners claim over dispute over land boundary, but these are small little conflicts that happen. We don't have major conflict that you have in the bigger countries. So it's generally free, relaxed, open. Everybody knows everybody. And so we are generally free from the pressures that the big countries have. So that is on Kiribati. Now, I'd like also just to say something here as a general statement about my being here, and I'm very happy to be part of this occasion, and I'm really certainly honored to be part of this occasion to address fellow geography lovers on this very special occasion. And I wish to thank the President of the American Geographic Society for this rare honor to be part of the Geography 2050, and for the opportunity to share some geographical features about Kiribati, as I've already done, and our good and long-time neighbors and friends, the people of I'd like to share this with our good and long-time neighbors and friends, the people of the United States. I would like to focus in my remarks on the bounty of the ocean, preserving our blue planet, but I will do that later when I address the teachers. At the outset, let me admit that geography had always been one of my most favorite subjects in school from the very first day I ended classroom learning about 60 years ago. And right up to senior secondary education, when I suddenly found out that I could not continue with it after my teachers decided to put me in a science stream in which only science students were taught. But that did not affect my deep personal taste for geography. So I continued reading geography books and materials that I could lay my hands on in school and outside school. And I've continued doing that up to now. So I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity. And I know that geography remains to be a very important part of our school curriculum in Kiribati. I've enjoyed geography and I've learned a great deal from it. The spirit of geography, the discovery spirit, wanting to get out and know more, has done great work for me. And I've been able to succeed as a man representing Kiribati outside by having these urge to connect, to know more, to connect with other people, with other cultures, with other races. And I'm very lucky that here, as an ambassador of Kiribati to the United Nations and Washington, and very soon to Canada and Mexico, the spirit of geography is well alive in me, which enables me to reach out without too much difficulty, because I do know there are so many beautiful people, beautiful ideas out there to interact with, which will benefit me and my country as I represent my country this time. And so I'm very fortunate that I'm here in the United Nations, connecting with other ambassadors. I have no problem reaching out to them. Why? Because of the spirit of geography that has been instilled with me from the very start of my schooling in primary and then up to secondary, as I mentioned earlier. And now, of course, I would like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to the American Geographic Society for its great service to humanity through its long continuing work for the past 169 years since its inception in 1851. Interestingly, 1851 was the year the first American missionaries set out from San Francisco to bring the good news to the islands and people of Micronesia in the North and Central Pacific, which included the Gilbert Islands, Kiribati, now called Kiribati, which was eventually 6 years after the missionaries set out from San Francisco. So in 1857, the American missionaries arrived in one of my islands, and they started preaching about, the good news. Good news, the world is big, everybody's out there, all loved and all cared for by one super creator out there. And so replacing what we had then, because we believe in our ancestral gods. Ancestral gods were there to look after us. But when the Christian gospel came, as brought by the American missionaries from Boston, yes, we adopted a global view and here we are, and here I am, being part of you. And all this happened because of the Geographic Society, sort of briefing those who were going out to the islands. Because by then, I think there had already been an expedition by the American scientists going out to the islands. They already mapped the islands. And so that was a useful piece of geography for the missionaries, that some mapping had already been done by the American expedition, as they call it, 1850, a few years after the American Geographic Society, 1853 or 54, that the American expedition of the islands took place. And so I'd like to thank you again, thank the American Geographic Society for this honor and privilege of being part of this occasion, and especially for elevating the profile of Kiribati in this event by making Kiribati a focus of your Geography 2050 event. I thank you.
I am here to talk to you a little bit about the Phoenix Islands Protected Area. And before I even begin, let me say that the work that I'm showing you right now is the work of many, many people. And it's a story that's 20 years old this year. The Phoenix Islands were first sort of scientifically discovered in the year 2000 with Greg Stone and David Obura and Sangeeta Mangubai. And then since then, we have become a marine protected area in 2006, fully implemented in 2008, inscribed as a World Heritage Site in 2009. And here we are in 2020, 20 years later, sharing the exciting science and the beauty and some of these remarkable creatures that live in this incredibly remote place. So let me take you there. Starting in a part, these iconic now, views from space, which are so special of our Earth. It's always easy to start in a place that's familiar. And I know what you're thinking. I've looked at a million images of the globe from space. It's all familiar. And that's sort of true until we spin it and really start to get a sense of how big the Pacific is, which, at least for me, even my whole entire life, of course, looking at these incredible images, when I sit still and think and really contemplate the scale of the Pacific, it still takes my breath away. And the Phoenix Islands Protected Area sits in a very special spot in the Pacific, right here, this little box. I use little in an interesting way because it is little compared to the scale of the Pacific, but it is big too. It's roughly the size of California for a sense of scale. It's about 408,000 square kilometers, and it sits just below the equator in the equatorial Pacific and is a very interesting place oceanographically. This place is part of the Republic of Kiribati, which actually has 3 island archipelagos. The Phoenix Islands Protected Area is in the Phoenix Island Archipelago, which is in the center of the 3 archipelagos. And these 3 archipelagos are, they have 33 islands total across them. And if you were to smush them together, J. Martin Troost says that, I love his analogy. He says, you'd roughly have a landmass the size of Baltimore. But if you spread them apart, right, and you look at them in their full scale, they spread the continental distance of, the distance of Australia or across the continental United States. So this is a very large ocean area. And this places Kiribati as one of the largest ocean countries in the world. The Phoenix Islands Protected Area was one of the original large-scale marine protected areas. First, there was Australia's Great Barrier Reef Marine Park in the late 70s, and then the Phoenix Islands Protected Area and Papahanaumokuakea in the Northwest Hawaiian Islands came to be roughly the same period of time. And since then, there have been a number of large-scale marine protected areas that have cropped up throughout the world and a lot in the Pacific, including the United States Pacific Remote Islands Marine National Monuments, which, as an American, for me, makes me always think of the Phoenix Islands and Kiribati as being the country right next door, even though it's several thousand miles away from where I live. So marine protected areas are one of the best ways that we have, not the only way, but one of the best ways that we have to protect the ocean. And in recognition of that, marine protected areas, or MPAs, are growing in number and size. This is an image I took from the Marine MPA Atlas just this morning. It was last updated just a few days ago. So this is the most current snapshot there is. And what I want to point to you is all of these colorful squares, dots, circles, and otherwise interesting shapes spread throughout the globe are all places that are either currently protected, are partially protected, are designed and hopefully implemented for protection in the future, or are proposed and committed. And despite all of this, this beautiful colored rainbow of protection, we have very little of the ocean protected overall. Certainly have not yet approached 10% or 20%, which I think a lot of people are hoping for in the near future, in the coming decades, which of course is part of Geography 2050. But the Phoenix Islands, I hope you can see my mouse, is here, right here in the center, this square box. And it's special for a number of reasons. First, when you think about its fishing protection level, it's fully protected. Second, it's fully established, designed, and implemented. And third, it's one of the very few among the very large size class. So right here, this last little piece. And that makes the Phoenix Islands not only the largest and deepest UNESCO World Heritage Site, not only the first large-scale marine protected area put forth by a least developed country, but also remaining today as one of the most important marine protected areas in terms of how large it is, how well it's protected, and what it's protecting. This is a bit of another rainbow graph for you, but I really like it. It shows what was the fishing effort, the number of fishing days on the left side of this graph before PIPA was closed fishing protection. And you can see that before and after, the number of fishing days were dramatically reduced, showing that this was an area where there was a lot of fishing and extractive activity, a place that really could benefit from protection. And once protected, the fishing effort was dramatically reduced. A paper was just published this year looking at a bunch of large-scale marine protected areas 1 year before and 1 year after closure. And I want to draw your attention to the Phoenix Islands protected area here, which shows this dramatic change or difference in fishing effort a year before and a year after closure. A lot of other large-scale marine protected areas, very importantly, were able to lock in the protections prior to exploitation. But the Phoenix Islands were able to not just lock in their protections, but they were able to protect an area that was actively being utilized. And so the Phoenix Islands offer a very special place in marine protected area history, their current importance, as well, of course, their geographic fascination for where they are. When I say fishing protection, what we're mostly talking about, of course, are tuna, which are a very important food resource and a very important global economic resource and a very important economic resource for the Republic of Kiribati. And now that they're no longer being fished regularly, one of the ways we study this incredibly beautiful wild animal is to look at their larval forms. So in case you've never seen a picture of a larval tuna, I couldn't leave you today without making sure you've seen a picture of one. And some of those science that we're doing is taking some unconventional approaches to trying to study and ask questions about whether or not PIPA is a spawning ground for tuna. They are, and whether or not we see changes in tuna demographics. And you'll have to stay tuned on that because that's a longer scale question that we have to answer over many, many years and over time. But the way we do this now is we go out to the to PIPA, which is really far away, right? It's I think I showed you on a map where it is, but to put this in context, when you're out there, the closest permanent population to you are on the International Space Station. And so we go out for weeks at a time with a bunch of colleagues and collaborators. These particular data were taken from the Sea Education Association, throwing nets over the side, capturing the zooplankton. Tons of undergraduates then sort through the incredible, soup that is the surface of the ocean, the upper 50 meters, in order to pull out the larval tuna and their eggs in order to look at whether and where they are spawning within PIPA, which is a very important question and one that remains of economic importance to the protected area, the country, and of course the Pacific as a whole. Back to the protected area. It's called the Phoenix Islands Protected Area, which is really a misnomer. There's 8 islands. They're beautiful. They were actually embarked upon by Darwin way back when. It was part of the way he started to think about atolls, which of course there's new information coming to light about the atoll formation, but this sort of was one of the places that helped Darwin to think about how atolls might have been formed. But when we think about the Phoenix Islands, I know we're thinking about the islands because of the name, and I'll show you some of those, but I also wanted to show you just how close you are to the deep sea and to the open ocean. So this is Canton Island, the only inhabited island in the Phoenix Islands protected area. And when I say inhabited, I mean a caretaker population, government employees, about 25 to 50 people total, who use this island as a home base to live, to protect, to enforce the protections of the protected area. The rest of the islands have nobody living on them. For example, Rawake, this is the whole island. You can walk around it in about a half an hour. It's an important bird nesting site. You can see the reef surrounding it. And then of course you can see the deep blue of the open ocean and then the deep sea, with literally a stone's throw away from anywhere you're standing. Some of the reefs don't even break the surface. They are seamounts that just some come so close, but no longer have any superficial evidence. You can't see them at all. And then some places like this, Nikamororo, are almost just as large as Canton, but have no people at all. And so to give you a sense of this place, I just wanted to show you these aerial views to show you how much ocean there is and how small the islands really are. So keeping that in mind, I love this cartoon, this person contemplating the sea, I hope, or contemplating whatever it is that they're thinking about. He doesn't realize that what they're sitting on is an incredible treasure of marine life, as well as human history right below them. Trying to make a map in a place that's so remote and so far away is a hard thing to do. But this is the best map we have. This was made by Sarah Rosenthal from the University of Hawaii. And she worked to put all of our multi-beam sonar, multi-beam echo sounder data together, intertwined with the satellite altimetry to come up with the most bathymetrically accurate map that we have, showcasing what's really in the Phoenix Islands, which, as you can see, is so much more than just the islands themselves. The islands are marked, you can see them named in white, but of course there's an underwater mountain chain, there's clusters of islands. In the very center, you'll see this dark area, which is actually a hadal trough, tons of abyssal plain, and of course, all of this has a whole lot of ocean sitting on top of it. Just to give you a sense of perspective, the average depth of the abyssal plain in this area is roughly 5,000 to 6,000 meters below the surface of the sea. So this is a whole lot of ocean volume. This is just the satellite altimetry data, but can give you a better sense maybe of what this might look like from this angle. And again, you can see all of these different ocean features. So the Phoenix Islands are not just the islands themselves. They also have coral reefs, pelagic open ocean, the deep sea, of course, what we see on the surface of the islands. But putting them together is one of the most important things that we're trying to do. Understand how this place functions in the Central Pacific with no people around. So just a few quick little stories, which are very relevant to our global situation. Of course, everywhere it's very depressing. There's a global decline of tropical coral reefs. And everywhere you go in the world, we can see evidence that reefs are no longer what they once were, even just a few decades ago. But there are places that still thrive. And there are places that have high resilience. And there are places that are recovering. And the Phoenix Islands are part of that story. You know, it's a really important question in the place in the middle of nowhere to ask, if you leave the reefs alone, can they recover? And the reefs I'm just going to show you one small spot, the Canton Lagoon, prior to bleaching, was very delicately layered. It was clearly a very mature coral community, and it had been undisturbed for a long period of time. Then in 2000 and 2002, the Phoenix Islands bleached devastatingly. So there was almost 100% mortality in this area. But a short decade later, the reefs had rebounded. And this gives us great hope. And also, it's very interesting for us to try to understand the mechanisms of recovery, the mechanisms of resilience and of repopulation, and of trying to understand why certain reefs do recover like this, and while some reefs still don't. And in order to do that, you know, these long-term studies go across multiple ENSO states, looking at El Nino, La Nina, ENSO neutral years, and trying to understand how reefs change. But trying to do this in a place where we don't live and where we don't have access to is very hard. And so we've been using some technology developed by Stuart Sandin and his group out at San Diego and Scripps as part of the 100 Islands Challenge, using photogrammetry or e-reefs, where we can look underwater, make a map, essentially stitching together thousands of photographs with several hours of scuba diving, and then being able to look closely at these high definition benthic photo mosaics over time, for years later sometimes, in order to get a sense of what we have. Here's an example from Christmas Island, also owned by Kiribati, and it really shows you how we can look at the change in coral demographics and benthic communities from year to year. And this kind of technology is really important in a place where you can't go back and just say, I forgot to measure something. Let's go back and look again. We can only look again through our photographs. And so the quality of the photographs and the quality of the technology is critical to enable us to study benthic change. It's not just the imagery, there's data involved, and there's a lot of data embedded in this imagery. What I'm showing you here is the work of hundreds of hours of undergraduate time, you know, tracing individual corals and then identifying them to species, so that we can click each species on and off and ask ourselves questions about whether or not some species are growing faster than others, or whether some grow better when they're closer to others, or whether there are some inhibitory properties. And these kinds of e-reefs and e-reef technology, photomosaic technology, is helpful for us to understand not just whether or not the Phoenix Islands as a whole are resilient, but how each place comes back or doesn't. And each site is different. And this place-based ecology relies on cutting-edge technology to help enable us to learn. The Phoenix Islands This is just 4 different years of recently. This is 2015, 16, 17, and 18. It just shows you some of the differences in sea surface temperature that these islands can experience. And so this is not a straightforward study where we measure it once and we know what's going to happen for the future. If we're going to think about Geography 2050, we have to understand how things change dynamically through time. And so finally, just to wrap up, I'll give you one more vignette. Here's our island resident thinking, we're sitting on top of this incredibly large seamount. And one of the other things that we have to do for him and for us is to really give a picture, a better visual, a better map, and a better map of not just what could be there, but what's actually there with visuals too. And the way we do this is really through partnership. We've had several ships go out to the deep sea of the Phoenix Islands in the past few years. Just since 2017, we've done a little bit more than 25 ROV dives and mapped about 21.1% of the marine protected area with multi-beam sonar, using these large government ships or foundation ships and large remotely operated vehicles, large ROVs, to go down and look at this ocean part of the Phoenix Islands. And before you can take a large-scale ROV down, you have to make a map, right? This map is insufficient to dive on. So we make these multi-beam echo sounder maps, these rainbow-colored sections, to give us much more detail. And these are very important because if you were to take a look at this image, for example, this top gray blob is the satellite altimetry map. The bottom shows the multi-beam sonar. And if you were to overlay them, just for example, in this peak over here at the very top, there's a 950-meter difference. And so you can't drive unfortunately an SUV-sized robot on a map that's 950 meters off and inaccurate. So we make better maps. They look like this. Spend some time deciding where we're going to dive, and then make a drive track. This is roughly an 8 to 10 hour track. We say, okay, let's go hike this trail, right? Take the ROV on this particular space on the map. And we do this, it's dark down there. So only with the lights we bring with us. So these ROVs have high definition cameras and a lot of light that they can use to light up an area. And from this just to drive this home, this is a tiny space explored. There's still a lot more to explore. But just in these tiny spaces that we can go, we see incredible things. Beautiful, colorful deep sea corals, some of which have been alive for well over 1,000 years. We see a diversity of taxa, some new species which have never been discovered, new species of coral, of sponge, of crab, of brittle star, of snails, lots of new things, new species of bacteria even, which have implications for trying to understand the way the microbial life interacts with the macro fauna down in the deep sea, and may have implications for us biomedically here on the surface. And what we don't know is amazing. People are always asking us what we do know about the deep sea, and we do know a lot, but what we don't know is just as incredible, even at the species level. Especially at the species level, the 80% of what we see has not yet been described. And even at the family level, we range between 10 and 40% of the taxonomic families have yet to be described in these areas. And so I will just show you a couple of images of what this looks like from the deep sea. You can see this incredible imagery with these high definition cameras, these corals. This is live, not live, but this is live captured footage from when we were down in the deep sea, lit up and illuminated. You can see these incredible colors and creatures which have literally never been seen before. And trying to discover what the Phoenix Islands is really protecting has been part of our challenge. And then trying to study these animals and understand what we can learn from them requires a lot of technology, a lot of patience, and it's 100% worth doing. We do this in collaboration with the Republic of Kiribati. We do this because going someplace new is incredible. Going someplace remote is the only way we can really study nature without too much anthropogenic influence. And we do this in partnership and collaboration with a country which has protected this incredibly large part of the ocean, but doesn't have the capacity to access it. I don't have the capacity to access it without partnership, collaboration, and a lot of people who might be watching this who always can help to contribute. So I'll leave you with my favorite view of the Pacific. And again, I'm excited to have this conversation with Adam and the ambassador to talk about this view and what this place means in the context of our entire globe, and to really think about how much one protected area has been able to contribute and how many more protected areas are also helping to contribute to protecting our global oceans. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Randy. That was really interesting. I'd like to start our discussion section now by asking you a question, and it will flow into a question for Ambassador Cito, which is that how do you set up the governance structures and how do you set up policies of use, and where do you want to see this go over time for what is an ocean structure? We as Americans are used to governance structures for terrestrial subjects, but you are dealing with the deep ocean and the ocean where people aren't living, as you've shown. And you, Mr. Former President, and now Mr. Ambassador, you were governing a country that is 99.98% ocean and only 2/1000ths land mass, as Randy has already pointed out. This must change the way you want to govern and what policies you set. And I'd also love to hear where you'd like to see this go over the next 30 years, because we are at Geography 2050. Randy, over to you, and please then lead in Mr. Ambassador.
Absolutely. It's a really important question, and I'm very grateful that I don't have to be the one governing because it is a really challenging question to answer. And I think it's one that it's not just Kiribati who's trying to answer this, right? It's large ocean, small island developing states or large ocean states, as you might want to think of them, are all dealing with these kinds of issues everywhere. I will say from the science point of view that one of the things that I'm most proud of and I think is really special and important and I'd like to see amplified in the next 30 years is the way we interface science with policy and making sure that there is truly transparent conversation and communication. And I'm really, really proud of the work that my Kiribati collaborators and I have been able to do in order to start that process for the Phoenix Islands protected area. For example, we have the Science Advisory Committee, which does review all of the permits to make sure that the latest science can be brought to bear on any of the potential activities that may happen in PIPA. We speak directly to the PIPA Conservation Trust, which of course has several government ministers, as well as the ambassador as chair, as well as our external partners and collaborators and funders to make sure that the science is delivered everywhere. And then we really go to Tarawa, which is the capital, and speak to the people, speak to students, speak to the government, speak to villages in Minneapolis, and make sure that science is accessible to anybody who would like to access it. And it's something that I think needs to grow and needs to continue to grow and find support and find new voices and find new avenues to participate. But I do think that this back and forth between science and policy is not just set on paper in this protected area. It's very real, it's very tangible. And it's all built on the backs of very strong relationships. And I think that's very special. Ambassador, I'm sure you'd like to say more about the actual governance and about your role as the chair of the Phoenix Islands Protected Area Conservation Trust.
Mr. Ambassador, I think you're still on mute. So if you hover your mouse at the bottom on the left, you'll be able to unmute your microphone.
Thank you, Dr. Rochin, and thank you, Adam, for putting the question to, of course, to Randy and myself. And it's a very important question. How do we move forward with what we have? And of course, I thank Randy for the details and the articulation of what we have. Every person in Kiribati now knows more and more that the ocean is so important And of course, if I can just sort of flash back to the days when I was a little boy, and I would always hear my parents say, "You can never go hungry. You know, there's so much food out there. There's the cupboard. There's the, you know, no fridge in those days, but there's the cupboard. There's the cupboard of food. You just go out and get it." That is a famous saying to kids when they come back from school and they come hungry and they kind of look at the food cupboard and there's nothing there, and they say, "No, come on, get yourself out. Just go out there and dig something in the sand, and you know you'll find food in the sea." I hope that we will still say that 2050. Geography 2050 will report that that's what we're still saying in the islands, in Kiribati. Why I'm asking that question and why I'm posing it, because there is a threat now, as indicated by Randy. It's what is it? Globalization, modernization, whatever you call it, is sweeping the earth, even sweeping those of us in the islands. And we know that we cannot do enough damage because we're a small population. The ocean is so big, but we are not the ones doing that. You know, there are forces from outside coming in the name of economic development, in the name of economic prosperity. You know, we've got to go out and gather and turn it around into economic wealth. And there is no limit to economic wealth. There is limit to storing food in the cupboard, storing fish, octopus. You know, you can only collect enough for the day or a few days. But in the name of economic, you can, you know, just keep on mopping up whatever you see and keep accumulating it because there's no end to it. And this is the danger, as I see it in the island. And so now we are part of this global fight against these forces, or at least moderating them, at least making them more sensible and rational. Because what we're doing is just destroying ourselves in the name of what? Prosperity? Progress? No, I think we're losing sight of the most important reason why we are on the planet. We are humans. We want to continue living from day to day, but we must not do anything to damage what is there, the bounty of the ocean, as you call it. So our aim now in Kiribati is to try and get everybody on board through the PIPA, and I'm glad that Randy is talking about the PIPA now. The PIPA is now a tool, and I'm using it. I'm chair of that. I'm getting more and more excited. The more I think about it, we need to get out into the community, to the people there. Because people there are still enjoying as much as they want about it. And they've changed their attitude, not like the old people many generations back. They say, just collect enough. You don't need to, because they go bad. And you will contaminate the environment. You know, things will be foul smell. You know, you won't have enough time to preserve this fish or whatever. So you just collect enough. And if you collect more than what you need, you throw it to the neighbors, because that's the way the neighbors can use it. And when your neighbor is fishing and collecting too much, he will throw it back to you. That's the way we did things, but not now. And so we need to kind of maybe step back a bit. Continue development, but do it in a sensible way. Do it in a way we're not destroying ourselves and making ourselves go extinct as a human population on the planet. And so we are working, PIPA is working on what we call bring people home together with the government. Bring people home means getting the mindset out there that people will have to start making rules like they used to do, you know, way back. They say, you know, don't. Nowadays, we believe that the government is the one to make rules. And when the government makes rules, we break them because they're not our rules. When the government decides to close that area, we will go and open it and continue fishing. Now, it's important that the communities are involved, because once the communities are sitting down in the village and thinking about it, it becomes their own. And they say, this is our rule. We want to do it this because it's good for us and our children and our grandchildren. Let's preserve. Let's not catch fish. when they're breeding. Let's create a period, a moratorium of a week. Let the fish breed, spawn, and grow a bit, and then you go out and catch. These are rules that are start coming in now as a result of Bring Paper Home initiative. And I hope we will have more of that, not only the Kiribati people, our neighbors in the Pacific, everybody around the world, coastal people. We must start thinking along this line. So if that helps with that question, thank you.
Oh, that's very interesting. Can I follow up on that with a question, which is that on Saturday, the advanced placement geography teachers will be working on doing a mapping exercise of Kiribati. What kinds of maps will be beneficial for them to create for the communities that you described, for the policymakers, for the government? Let us know what can be done with better data for Kiribati.
Well, Randy can also help with that, but if I can share my views on that sort of question. Yes, I think, first of all, we need to get a feel of the people that they've got this, enormous resource, under their care and control. Of course, thanks to the United Nations declaring the 200-mile easy economic exclusive economic zone thing, because that has turned us into a huge continent, right? We're a continent, we're an ocean continent. Little islands, so only the size of New York, as you put it, them, but the ocean is as broad, as big as the Australia and the American continent, sort of spread-wise. And so they need to realize that that is a resource that they've got to help in protecting. Not expecting the United Nations to come down, they've got to do their part. And of course, it's good to have the global community coming in with frameworks and what have you. But the important is that people must get that chance. So the geography 2050 will help the people of Kiribati drawing that map and maybe quantify to each person saying, and I think I tried to quantify it in my article on the People Story, that for an ocean of that size, 3.5 million square kilometer, and the average depth, which I estimated in my paper, was 1,000 meters or 1 kilometer. But in fact, if you increase it with 1,000 meters, each person has about 40 cubic kilometers of ocean. 40, each person in Kiribati, 40 cubic kilometers. So it's 40 kilometer times 1 kilometer wide, and deep is 1 kilometer deep. But if you raise the figure, the depth to 2, even 2, then it's 80 kilometers, cubic kilometer per person. And it's the wealth in that volume of. And if you raise the average to 3, yes, Randy was saying 6,000 is the deepest part of those islands, the oceans there. So, but you can imagine. So each Kiribati must realize there's the wealth to be protected, not only for themselves, but for the world, because we're going to feed the world, right? And of course, hopefully, we'll make some money, but not too much money to destroy ourselves. Just make enough and manage it. So that sort of geography must be there in the mind of people. And then it makes them feel important that they are in charge of a huge stock of biodiversity, marine biodiversity for the world. Make them feel good. And so then provide the tools. Let them see what's inside. And I think Randy's always doing that, coming in with these things, coming and letting people see on the screen. That's what you have. Look at these things. Many of the things they don't name, they don't have no names, but they never knew it. Their ancestors never go down that far to know that there was so much down there. So that would be my contribution to this question, Adam. Randy, if you want to.
Randy.
I agree 100% with everything the ambassador has said. To me, every time I look at where I live, just using these satellite images and Google Street View, right, it does two things for me. One, it's practical. You're like, oh, okay, well, now I can connect the dots between this spot and this spot. But it also makes me feel a little vulnerable, right? About exactly how little space there is around me, and how much we have to protect, and how special, and how there's no other space exactly like the one where I live, right? Or where you live. And every single space has its own really unique geography. And when you're on the ground, you can't get that sense of it. And so I think that any of these views, any of these maps that teachers will put together to help put that in context, to give the bird's eye view, to both help everybody connect the dots from one spot to another, and also just realize how special your spot is of real value. And the second thing is, I completely agree with the ambassador, is that the concept of depth is very hard. I'm a marine biologist, and it still blows my mind away when I think about how deep we're going, right? And how deep we can see, and how much we don't know. It's really hard to wrap your head around. And I've worked in Tarawa, and one of my favorite moments is working with a local village in North Tarawa, and we were trying to use some, not these big ROVs that we were showing you, but some of the smaller technology. And I said, let's go to the deep sea, take me to a deep spot. And they took me to a place that was about 100 feet deep, because that's where they usually fish for deep fish. And that is deep, but it's not 1,000 meters, right? or 2,000 or 6,000 meters. And so trying to expand our understanding of what deep really means, and how much water that really is. I love your way you're thinking about this, Ambassador Cito. This really is every person in Kiribati is so wealthy in terms of ocean area and ocean volume, and trying to really drive that home is a really a big task. It's a huge challenge, but it's a really important one.
Thank you, Dr. Rojan. You obviously have a really cool job. And for the thousands of teachers and students who are online today, how would you suggest they go about getting a cool job like yours, or even joining the Women Working for the Oceans?
Well, you can join Women Working for the Oceans by going to the W2O website. And there are some incredible ocean conservationists, ocean leaders, voices for the ocean, spokespeople for the ocean, who help and contribute in all kinds of different ways. So that's a really tangible organization that you can reach out to. And it's growing, and it's a great group of people. So I really encourage you to check that out. As for my job, every time I sit in a room, even this one, right, everybody's in the same room at the same space, and there's no exact similar path that everybody took to get to that room, right? There's no one way to get there. And so I have had many twists and turns in my career, and I would say that the one single ingredient that's been constant has been investment into where I am when I'm there. And so every time I'm in a place, I'm all the way there. I just jump right in with my whole heart and my whole that I have. I put it all in. And as things twist and turn, you just go deeper without even realizing it, right? You just are part of where you are, and your job kind of tailors to you, and you tailor to it. And it's a really, sorry, that's not very practical, but I do think that, I guess the practical piece of that is to invest in where you are. Really, if you have a passion, go for it. Go all the way. Don't stand at the edge and think, well, maybe I'll do this in a little while. No, you're there, do it. Jump in the pool. Go all the way in, and it'll take you to interesting places, and you just have to be open to the opportunities.
I would like to add, if I may, that with your membership of thousands of teachers and students of geography, and having said what I said earlier about the importance of this information, knowledge, and of course people in Kiribati are going to benefit. And they're going to change their mindset, are going to, transform themselves and do more instead of waiting for the world to come and do things for them. So it provides a connection. I think what your membership, the American Geographic Society membership, I believe can be very powerful force. With your American, membership here, and your connection with the rest of the world, with the bigger countries, the powerful nations, there's got to be this conversation that we need to all work together and help those island people protect what they have, because it's not only theirs, it belongs to all of us. What the food and the fish and the shelf in New York and Paris, whatever it may be, and anything from the sea must have some relationship with what we are doing in the Pacific, and especially in Kiribati, where we have a huge area there, and we are doing it all for all, not just for Kiribati people. I know we're doing that right now, and especially, and as I mentioned, the tuna spawning in that part of the Pacific. I think we are producing tuna. We're a factory, a biological factory, producing, immeasurable amount of not only tuna, the other fish that are on the tables every day to fill up the stomachs, and to combat the hunger and the poverty, which is one of the biggest goals of the United Nations. Been working on it for 75 years, still have not achieved it. And so let's get all our membership in the Geographic Society to support us and to all talk to the people going out fishing, the American who fish there, the Japanese who fish there. They've got to do it responsibly. They've got to be responsible people. They must not go and rip the resources and destroy it just because of what? Profit. They're aiming for bigger figures in the next financial account. And that is not the right thing. And so we need to engage and keep talking that we have a role to play, protect, help these people in the small islands. Not enough capacity yet, but they want to do something. And with our friends from outside coming in, I'm sure we'll be strong together, and we can save our ocean and our planet together. Thank you.
And if any of the people listening today wish to either reach out to you or visit Kiribati, is there a particular way they should be in contact with you, Dr. Rojan, or you, Mr. Ambassador?
There is a website for the Phoenix Islands, which everyone is welcome to visit. And then, of course, I'm at Boston University. My lab has a webpage. You can find me. I'm sometimes slow on email, but you can find me. And I'll let the ambassador jump in with his contact, but I'd love to add one more thing to what he had said earlier too. But Ambassador, how should people reach you?
Yes, well, I think I'm already providing my contact with you, Adam. You can share that. You can share it. I tell you, you can share that. In politics, I always say, share my contact to as many as possible. I'm out of politics now, but it's a different kind of politics. I'm mobilizing an idea. The idea is to reach out and keep connecting with as many as we. So I'm available and I'm reachable, and of course, and if they really want to get there without me, they can go to Honolulu, catch a flight to Honolulu, and then look for a flight to Christmas Island. It's about just 2.5 hours. Honolulu Christmas is and another way is to go all the way. United Airlines, go all the way to Marshall, and the Marshall Islands is there, just a 1 hour from the Majuro Marshall to Tarawa in Kiribati, just 1 hour, and a smaller plane, of course. So that's easy, very easy to reach. And if they want to join me in my inaugural flight of our airline coming up soon, then let them register with me so I can put them on the plane. Those are very, very cool. And we can go together on the inaugural flight, which will travel from Tarawa, Canton, Christmas, Honolulu, and back that way. And so we can have a good time and enjoy ourselves seeing the islands of Kiribati and bringing it back as a great message for people to help and join in the fight against all these terrible things happening around us.
Mr. Ambassador, I want to just echo one thing that you said that I think is really important, and that I hope that all of the teachers and students who might be watching this really hear, that the work that you and your country have done is amazing. What you have done to help protect the oceans was catalytic around the world, and it was completely visionary, and is something that I deeply respect. And it's an honor to be a part of this project. And for me, the science is amazing, the place is beautiful, the conservation is completely passion filled, but the most important thing are the friendships and the relationships and the fact that we've done this together and collaboratively and have done things side by side and made new friends, and in the spirit of international partnership, I think has been just really special. And I just wanted to let everybody know that whatever you do with Kiribati, do it with Kiribati, not just for Kiribati, not just you know, as somebody who's so far away. There's always a way to reach out and do things with our partners and with our friends across the sea. And for me, it's that with, that one word, the word with, which has been a very defining characteristic of these relationships and of this project. And I'm very inspired by it, very inspired by the country. And I'm really grateful to this entire new world of geographers who can come and play a role. It's pretty exciting.
That's great, Randy. You're kind of putting in a new definition of democracy there. With, you say for the people, by the people, but now you say with.
I'll make sure to tell our founding fathers.
I like that. And if I may also add, Randy, you are actually a good example of a very, very good example of the friendship between the people of Kiribati and the people of the United States. You're already a good embodiment of the Treaty of Friendship, which was signed.
We are a good embodiment of the Treaty of Friendship. Yeah, Ambassador, I can't wait to see you in person again.
Of course, a Treaty of Friendship, which is very important, and it's still there, still alive. We haven't changed it. We might have amended to bring in Fanning and Washington now, because they're not in that Treaty of Friendship. And who knows in the future? And of course, the good connection, good marine cooperation now starting, but there should be more cooperation under that Treaty of Friendship between the United States and Kiribati. I don't know whether the United States signed Treaty of Friendship elsewhere, but maybe this is one very important friendship treaty. And we need to build on that. And I think we should have more of our friends. The Americans come down to Kiribati. You were there in the war, the Battle of Tarawa, and we thank you for that. And you created peace and freedom on the island, from that terrible war that was plagued in our island. Anyway, and so we must build on that and do more in terms of working together. Americans and Kiribati people working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Given that we've just had an election, what message would you like to send to our next president here in America? And I'm sure you would like to invite him down to Kiribati as well.
Thank you, Adam. That's a very good question. Of course, we are now waiting. Who's going to be the president? But whoever is the president, and now giving me this opportunity, I know you will deliver my message. I know the American Geographic Society is so big, the president would not fail to listen to what your society be delivering, especially on the inauguration or whatever. So I would wish, on behalf of Kiribati, wish the new president of the United States all the very best. In our language, Te Maori, Te Roi, and Tapu Moa, which means three things: the great gifts of the God, of our gods, and the ancestral gods. Te Maori means, life, blooming life, real life, full of life. And Tapu Roi is peace, tranquility. And Tapu Moa means, always moving forward and achieving and prosperity, achieving whatever is need to be achieved for the good of all. Yeah. So these are the blessings that I bestow on behalf of Kiribati on your new president, and also to ask your new president if he could have time to do more, to create more of that friendship, to build on that friendship was signed in September 1979, and to create more cooperation, more friendship between the people of America and the people of Kiribati, and to develop a lot of cooperative programs to protect our planet, protect the ocean, protect the the beautiful things we have in the islands nowadays. And so we hope the new president will be thinking more of that and giving more time for a small neighbor country like Kiribati, and hope that the two countries can work together to make the world a better place for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Rojan, Mr. Ambassador, that was a fascinating session. I really loved it. I'm sure that all of the thousands of teachers, students, and business people who are listening today will find this very interesting, and I'm sure that you will be getting lots of follow-up. Thank you very much on behalf of the American Geographical Society.
Thank you.
Thank you.